They erased his name from history, chiseled it off every monument, destroyed every statue, buried every record of his existence. But they couldn't erase what he built. An empire that stretched from the heart of Africa to the gates of Babylon. A military machine so powerful, it crushed kingdoms that had stood for 1,000 years. For 3,000 years, Egypt's pharaohs didn't just rule. They conquered. They dominated. They reshaped the ancient world with blood and gold. But here's what they don't teach you in school. Some of the most powerful pharaohs in Egyptian history have been deliberately hidden from us. Their stories too brutal. Their methods too terrifying. Their ambitions too dangerous to remember. Tonight, we're bringing them back from the shadows. This is the story of Egypt's most powerful pharaohs. The rulers who conquered empires, enslaved nations, and built monuments that still stand as warnings to the world. Let's begin with the one they tried hardest to erase. The year is 1479 BCE. Egypt stands at a crossroads. The previous pharaoh, THUTMOSE II, is dead. His heir, a child, too young to rule, too weak to hold power. Someone had to step in. Someone had to save Egypt from chaos. That someone was Hatshepsut. But there was a problem. She was a woman, and Egypt had never been ruled by a woman before. So she did something unprecedented. Something that would change Egyptian history forever. She declared herself pharaoh. Not queen, not regent, pharaoh. She wore the false beard of kingship. She dressed in male royal regalia. In every statue, every carving, every monument, she portrayed herself as a male pharaoh. And then she did what no one expected. She became one of the most successful rulers in Egyptian history. Under her reign, Egypt entered a golden age of prosperity. She launched the most ambitious building projects Egypt had ever seen. The Temple of Karnak was expanded to unprecedented scale. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari became one of the architectural wonders of the ancient world. But she wasn't just a builder. She was a conqueror. Hatshepsut launched military campaigns into Nubia and the Levant. She expanded Egypt's borders. She established trade networks that brought unprecedented wealth into Egypt. Her expedition to the land of Punt brought back gold, incense, exotic animals, and treasures that had never been seen in Egypt before. For 22 years, she ruled. For 22 years, Egypt prospered under her iron grip. But here's where the story gets dark. After her death, someone tried to erase her from history. Her stepson, THUTMOSE III, ordered her name chiseled off monuments. Her statues were destroyed. Her images were defaced. Her very existence was meant to be forgotten. Why? Because she broke the ultimate rule. She proved that a woman could be pharaoh. And the male rulers who came after her couldn't allow that precedent to stand. They failed. Because we remember her. And her legacy terrified them for good reason. The man who tried to erase Hatshepsut became Egypt's greatest military commander, THUTMOSE III. History would call him the Napoleon of Ancient Egypt, and he earned that title in blood. For 54 years, he ruled Egypt. But it wasn't the length of his reign that made him legendary. It was what he did with that time. 17 military campaigns, 17 separate invasions across the ancient Near East. He conquered territories from Nubia in the south to the Euphrates River in the north. He crushed the Mitanni Empire. He subjugated the Canaanites. He brought the mighty kingdoms of Syria under Egyptian control. But THUTMOSE wasn't just a brute warrior. He was a military genius. At the Battle of Megiddo in 1457 BCE, he did something that shocked the ancient world. His enemy, a coalition of Canaanite city-states, waited for him with a massive army positioned perfectly to defend the city. They expected him to take the safe route, the predictable route. Instead, THUTMOSE led his entire army through a narrow mountain pass. A pass so dangerous that his own generals begged him not to go. A pass where a single archer could hold off an entire army. He went anyway, and when he emerged on the other side, his enemies were caught completely off guard. The element of surprise was total. The battle was won before it even began. The coalition army fled in panic. THUTMOSE captured Megiddo and with it, control of the entire region. But that was just the beginning. Campaign after campaign, Thutmose expanded Egypt's empire to its greatest extent in history. He established the first professional standing army in the ancient world. He revolutionized military tactics. He created the supply systems and logistics that allowed Egypt to project power thousands of miles from home. The wealth that poured into Egypt was staggering. Tribute from conquered nations, plunder from defeated enemies, trade goods from territories now under Egyptian control. Egypt became the superpower of the ancient world, and Thutmose was its architect. But empires built on conquest are fragile. They require constant military pressure to maintain, and when that pressure falters, they crumble. The seeds of Egypt's eventual decline were planted in Thutmose's conquests, because maintaining this vast empire would drain Egypt's resources for generations. Still, in his time, Thutmose stood as the most powerful ruler in the known world. Kings bowed before him. Nations trembled at his name. Now we come to the most controversial pharaoh in Egyptian history, Akhenaten, the heretic king, the pharaoh who tried to destroy Egypt's gods. When Akhenaten came to power in 1353 BCE, Egypt was at the height of its power. Wealthy, stable, dominant, and then he did something unthinkable. He declared that all of Egypt's gods were false. Every deity that Egyptians had worshipped for thousands of years, meaningless. There was only one true god, he claimed, the sun disk, the Aten, and Akhenaten was his prophet. This wasn't just a religious reform. This was a revolution that shook Egyptian civilization to its core. He closed the temples. He disbanded the priesthood. He seized the wealth and power of the religious establishment that had stood for millennia. And then he built a new capital city, Akhenaten, the horizon of the Aten, an entire city built from nothing in the middle of the desert, dedicated to his new god. The old priesthood watched in horror. The people were confused. The empire began to fracture, but Akhenaten didn't care. He was transforming Egypt whether Egypt wanted it or not. He created a new art style, more realistic, more intimate, showing the pharaoh not as a distant god-king, but as a human being. Images of him playing with his children, kissing his wife, Nefertiti, living a domestic life. It was revolutionary. It was unprecedented. It was also destabilizing an empire. While Akhenaten focused on his religious revolution, Egypt's enemies saw opportunity. The Hittites expanded their territory. Vassal states rebelled. Egypt's influence in the Near East began to collapse. Letters from desperate allies flooded into Akhenaten. Send help. Send troops. Egypt's enemies are at our gates. Akhenaten ignored them. He was busy building temples to the Aten. For 17 years, this religious experiment continued. Egypt, once the dominant superpower, was becoming isolated, weakened, vulnerable, and then Akhenaten died. What happened next was swift and brutal. The priesthood returned with a vengeance. Akhenaten's city was abandoned. His temples were demolished. His name was chiseled off monuments. His religious reforms were reversed overnight. The old gods were restored. The old order was back. And Akhenaten, his name became a curse. Future pharaohs referred to him only as the criminal of Akhenaten. His very existence was an embarrassment to be erased. But here's the twist. His revolution, though it failed, changed Egypt forever. The absolute power of the pharaoh had been challenged. The priesthood had seen that even divine kings could be overthrown. The seeds of doubt had been planted. Egypt would never be the same. If you've heard of one Egyptian pharaoh, it's probably this one. Ramesses II. Ramesses the Great. The pharaoh who built more monuments, fought more battles, and left a bigger mark on history than any other. He ruled for 66 years. Think about that. 66 years as absolute ruler of the most powerful empire on earth. He had over 100 children. He built or expanded more temples and monuments than any other pharaoh. His colossal statues still dominate the Egyptian landscape thousands of years later. But Ramesses wasn't just about spectacle. He was about power. In 1274 BCE, he faced his greatest challenge. The Battle of Kadesh. The Hittite Empire, Egypt's rival for dominance in the Near East, had assembled the largest army in ancient history. Over 50,000 soldiers, thousands of chariots. They were waiting for Ramesses. The battle began disastrously for Egypt. Ramesses fell for a Hittite trap. He found himself surrounded, cut off from his main army, facing thousands of enemy soldiers with only his personal guard. By all accounts, he should have died there. Instead, he charged. Ramesses personally led a desperate counterattack that broke the Hittite encirclement. His royal guard fought like demons. Against impossible odds, they held until Egyptian reinforcements arrived. The battle ended in a stalemate. Neither side could claim total victory. But Ramesses claimed it anyway. He returned to Egypt and immediately began a propaganda campaign. Massive wall carvings depicted him single-handedly defeating the entire Hittite army. The Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty of 1259 BCE was the first recorded peace treaty in history. And it worked. For the rest of Ramesses' reign, Egypt and the Hittites maintained peace. But Ramesses' true power wasn't in war. It was in construction. Abu Simbel, the Ramesseum, the expansion of Karnak, the completion of his father's temple at Abydos. Everywhere you looked in Egypt, you saw Ramesses, his statues, his cartouches, his monuments. He wasn't just building temples. He was building immortality. These weren't just rulers. They were the architects of civilization itself. Hatshepsut proved that power isn't determined by gender. She built monuments that still stand today and established trade networks that brought unprecedented prosperity. THUTMOSE III created the template for military conquest that would be studied by generals for thousands of years. His tactics are still taught in military academies today. Akhenaten dared to challenge the divine order itself. Though his revolution failed, he showed that even gods could be questioned. He planted the seeds of religious reformation that would echo through history. Ramesses II understood something fundamental about power. Legacy isn't just about what you accomplish. It's about how you're remembered. His propaganda campaign was so successful that we still call him the Great over 3 millennia later. But their stories also teach us darker truths. Power built on conquest is temporary. Thutmose's empire eventually crumbled. Religious revolution imposed from above creates resentment.